Hi guys, I'm Chris.
And I'm Mike.
And welcome back to this week's No Limits, a Mid-Draft podcast. So how you doing this week, Mike?
Hey, I'm great. It's Easter, celebrating. Going to go see my parents up in New York. It's been, nearly a year with the pandemic since I've seen them. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's going to be good. Happy Easter. What about you?
Yeah,
What's going
happy
on?
Easter. All of you who listen to this, hope you had a great Easter weekend. As of recording, it's Thursday here, so I'm going up to Philly to see my in-laws. My kids are up there right now. We're able to record a little earlier tonight because I don't have to put them to bed before I record. But yeah, it's supposed to be low-key, just the family. But yeah, I'm excited.
Love it. Good stuff. And I'll be reading Extreme Measures over the weekend to get ready for our April book of the month on the podcast. I like this one. I'm enjoying it so far.
Yes. I downloaded the audiobook to listen on the train up to Philly. I listened to the first chapter today. It's pretty good. I think I remember I really like this one. It's very, so on the Vince Flynn newsletter, they just, profiled me this month, and they asked me my favorite character of the series, and I said I had to choose between either Mike Nash or Irene, and this book is very Mike Nash heavy, so.
Yep. I've seen some people, we're going to get to this, right, in April on our episodes,
yes.
I've seen some people criticize it for that reason, that, it opens up with a character that's not Mitch, and some think he plays a secondary role. I'm not getting that vibe so far. I like the tag team. I like how they're playing off each other, and they're so different. So, anyway, we have a lot to dig in there, but I'm with you. I like this one.
Yes. Save it for the next pod.
Yeah.
We have to talk about our patrons and the support that they give us. So we have now been able to ship roughly 3 shipments a month of 10 books each through our team up with Operation Paperback. And so it's the support that we get from our patrons that helps us not only cover our costs here, but then everything we have left over, we're putting into sending out books to the troops.
Yeah, I actually put 3 care packages out, and I'm getting 3 more ready for April. And Operation Paperback is so great. Every month I just ask, hey, got another 30 thriller books, most of them Vince Flynn, Mitch Rapp. I make sure every package has at least, out of the 10 books, 7 Mitch Rapp books. And I get names of usually troops who are currently deployed, and so I am able to ship the care packages overseas. And every once in a while, a veterans hospital or another veteran organization that is requesting books for a library, maybe a senior home or in the waiting rooms of some of the VA medical centers. And so we're shipping out care packages. We are over 130 books sent out to our troops and veterans, and we'll do another 30 more this month, thanks to the financial support of our patrons. So if you want to give back, help support the podcast, and help support that effort, just visit www.patreon.com/MitchRapPod, and that will tell you all the perks you get. You can get Mitch Rap Pod stickers, bookmark, 25% off coupon at our t-shirt shop to get a Mitch Rap Pod t-shirt, and all of your funds will help support our partnership with Operation Paperback.
And you get entry into our book giveaway. So
giveaways, that's right.
We still have a couple signed copies of Mitch Rapp novels. So been able to give out probably like 12 or so books right now so far.
Sure, yeah, I think so. 1 per month, pretty much.
So
all autographed by Vince Flynn or Kyle.
Exactly. So if you want to join, support us, and support a good cause, do that. Also, if any of you have books, you can reach out to us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and we could ship them for you. If you don't want to go to operationpaperback.com, we're willing to take your used book. So anything to help us with this program, that'd be great.
You could also email us at mitchrappod@gmail.com.
All right. So can you tell us who we're interviewing today, Mike?
Yeah, I'm excited. This
was a great interview.
Awesome. Yeah, you and I just kept talking about how much fun we had, how personable Jack is. And so we had Jack Carr on the podcast. So excited to get this interview to you. He had a lot to talk to us about. I mean, he just launched his new podcast, Danger Close. They're 3 episodes in, and it's awesome. Really enjoying the content. Yep. And then also Devil's Hand comes out in just under 2 weeks, mid-April. You can get a copy of The Devil's Hand, the fourth James Reese thriller by Jack Carr. So really hope you enjoy this interview. Check out his book. Check out his podcast. What a great time. We hope you have as much fun listening as we had recording this.
Yes.
All right, today we are very excited to welcome a man who needs no introduction, Navy SEAL, author, and now podcaster. Welcome, Jack Carr.
Hey, thank you guys for having me on. And yeah, we just hopped on. We were talking and getting all excited about talking all things Mitch Rapp, Vince Flynn, books, thrillers, and then we're like, we should start recording this now. So we just hopped on and hit record in the middle of our first couple minutes of getting to know each other. So yeah, and I love what you guys are doing. Saw when it popped up, and I was super fired up to see that, see you guys doing that. And of course, I was like, who are these guys? This looks awesome. And yeah, hopefully, reach back out at any time to jump on and talk anything, thrillers, Mitch Rapp, Vince Flynn, anything like that. I'm on board. I'm in.
Awesome. Well,
yeah.
We'll definitely take you up on that. But
sure.
First one, thank you for coming on the podcast, taking your time. We're a huge fan of you, huge fan of your books, obviously your new podcast, and especially all the work you do for veterans. I'm sure most of our listeners know who you are, but just in case for some reason, someone's been living under a rock who's actually listening to us, could you just give us a brief background about you and how you got to where you are now?
Yeah. So two things I want to do with my life. One was to serve my country in uniform, specifically as a SEAL when I found out what SEALs were when I was 7. And then the second thing was to write thrillers. And they're connected, although I didn't really see them as connected back when I was 7. But they're definitely connected. And a lot of that is because I started researching when I was a little kid. My mom was a librarian, so I grew up surrounded by this love of books. And when she found out I wanted to be a SEAL, I asked her what they were. We did some research at the local library, and every time something would come out about SEALs, about special operations, about Army Special Forces, terrorism, like I was there. Newsweek, Time Magazine, New York Times, Examiner, whatever it was. I was in there from like a very early age, and I collected and all that stuff. I still have most of my books with me from that I've collected throughout my life. But back then there was hardly any. You couldn't just jump online and go down the rabbit hole of Navy SEALs or Army Special Forces or CIA Ground Branch or whatever. You couldn't research that stuff if you heard about it somewhere. That was all you had is that book or that magazine article or that one sentence mention here or there. But the protagonists of a lot of thrillers back then and continuing today had backgrounds that I wanted in real life one day. So I was reading Tom Clancy and Nelson DeMille and David Morrell and AJ Quinnell and JC Pollock and Mark Olden and all these guys whose original books I still have. And now I have a lot of now these days I'm going back and I'm collecting first editions signed of those authors that I would read like in paperback or get secondhand here or there, take from my parents or whatever. So now I'm going back and building the collection of signed first editions, of which I have every Vince Flynn first edition.
No, I'm jealous.
Or he was at Simon & Schuster. So they're still in the boxes because we're in the middle of a move here. So they're in the boxes still and in these bubble wrap bookcase things. But when we get to the new house and I have an actual library, then they're going to go in a very, very special place.
Nice.
But I digress. So I'm reading all these things. I'm reading everything I can about warfare and terrorism and counterinsurgencies, and I'm reading all those authors. And what I don't really realize is that I'm giving myself an early education in the art of storytelling just by reading all these people or at these different stages of my life. But I'm also training up physically and mentally, trying to do everything I can to increase my chances of making it into the SEAL teams. So doing all those things. So I went in the SEAL teams, enlisted, was a sniper, became an officer, and then I got out in 2016. So I did 20 years. And during those last couple of years, I realized that after I got back from my last Iraq deployment, that it was time to get out and take care of my family. It was very clear to me that it was time. And so I picked my head up, looked around, and thought, okay, what's next? And well, next is that next chapter that I've thought about my whole life, which is writing thrillers. So started to write during that last year and a half that I was in the military. For those who have been, when you drop your papers, now it becomes your job to get out of this gigantic bureaucracy. So you're going to medical, you're going to dental, you're going to get read out of these different secret programs. You're turning in gear, you're standing in lines, you're making appointments, basically go in another pile. And people are just like, well, just go and get out of the military. So you have to So you have time. That's when I started writing that first novel, The Terminalist. When I started, I wrote down 6, 7, 8 different ideas that I wanted to explore, and it was very clear to me which one needed to be that first novel. It was Terminalist. I had to come out of the gate swinging hard. It had to be visceral. It had to be primal, and it had to get noticed by a New York publisher. Like that was what I was. The one I really wanted to write first was Savage Son, my third one, but that had to wait because I knew that the characters weren't developed enough to explore those themes yet. So Terminalist was the one, and it was very clear. And then even after the Terminalist, still not ready for Savage Son. Still had to write True Believer. My protagonist had to go on this journey of redemption, had to learn to live again, had to find this next mission in life. So after that, then it was time for Savage Son. And then now it's time for The Devil's Hand, which comes out April 13th. Right. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about that. Your first 3 books were fantastic, and the themes you chose from redemption, revenge, and with Savage Son, I've heard you talk about the dark side of man. What can readers look forward to as a theme in The Devil's Hand? I mean, I'm halfway through it. It's incredible. And
just got my copy today.
Yeah.
Thank you. I wish you guys didn't have galleys because I just got my hardcovers today.
Nice.
I just filmed the opening thing of it, and I think I'll put that up on Friday or something. But yeah, this just came out. And I'm not giving many galleys away because they printed the galley before first pass edits. Okay. So it had like 0 other eyes on it before that one printed. So there's, in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many little mistakes in there. Not huge ones, but small ones.
Dude,
so
it's kick-ass. It's kick-ass.
Yeah, it's really good.
You put James Reese really on a new path, professionally, personally. I don't want to say much more than that, but can you tell us about your thought process and your mission in writing this, the 4th book?
Yeah, so exploring this one, things that I thought about while I was in the solo teams, and now that I'm out, what I continue to think about today, and that was, hey, what does the enemy learn by watching us on the field of battle for the last 20 years? And what did they learn from 1979 to 2001? 2 very different models, 2 very different paradigms when we're talking about terrorism. And then as I'm writing, things are happening in 2020. What a crazy year it was. So I'm writing this book where I'm putting myself in the enemy's shoes and looking back on these 2 distinct different periods, 79, 2001, 2001 to today. But I know the enemy is not just watching our response to COVID, not just watching the civil unrest in our cities, not just watching a very contentious political season and then going about their day. No, they're taking lessons from these things and they're applying it to future battle plans. So that's really what the book is about. So as these things are happening during this very pivotal, tumultuous year we just had, I'm real time writing some of these things into the storyline.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the first ones I had like the one word, so revenge without constraint, but I wrote revenge on a little yellow sticky and put it on my computer. And then redemption, boom, same thing, yellow sticky. And then I found out that I had misunderstood Stephen Pressfield when he was on Rogan years ago, and he talked about this is what I thought he talked about, that he would take one word for his books. And Stephen Pressfield, for those listening, wrote Gates of Fire, Legend of Bagger Vance, the Afghan Campaign. He has a new book out called The Man at Arms. But I thought he was saying that he would take one word and put it next to, in his case, I think it was a typewriter, and that would guide him as he wrote. I thought that's a fantastic idea. So I wrote revenge down, and if something didn't either directly or indirectly lead back to that theme, then I edited it out right away. So when I got to Simon & Schuster, I thought they changed a ton, and they didn't change anything. They had a couple clarification in a couple spots, but that was it. And I thought they were going to change a ton. I thought, oh, it's going to Simon & Schuster, it's going to New York publisher. If they want to put exploding robots from outer space in, then guess what's going in? Exploding robots from outer space are going in.
You had a tight story, though. Can't change it. It's perfect.
Yeah, but I think that's because of having that revenge.
Right.
Note that kept me on track as I went along. But then I became friends with Stephen Pressfield later on, and I found out he was telling a story about a playwright who would write a sentence down about a play that he's working on. And so now I've moved on from the one sentence thing. Right. So Savage Son, it became the dark side of man through the dynamic of hunter and hunted. So more than one word, but it still fits on a yellow sticky. So now I've given myself a sentence or two to play around with. So for this one, it's what does the enemy learn by watching us on the field of battle. And I explore a few different things in this book, like targeted assassinations, the ethics, morality, legality behind targeted assassinations, because I thought about that in the SEAL teams. I thought about what we were doing, putting targeted packages together every night, going out on these missions, coming home, and then seeing in the news, hey, a drone strike just killed so-and-so here, whether in Somalia or Afghanistan or wherever it was, and just thinking about being in uniform for so long and being there from September 11th all the way through when I got out. You kind of take a little time to breathe and think about, hey, is what we're doing really moving the ball forward? Are we improving this situation? What are we solving? Are we making a situation worse? So I think about those things. I did, and I continue to think about those things today, because now we have kids going downrange that are fighting the kids of people that I fought at the beginning of the war. Right. So those are themes that I think about. So it's very natural for them to find their way into the pages of the novels as well.
So you brought up something interesting that I wanted to ask you real quickly. So you mentioned that these novels that you write, they're not just entertainment. You want to say something else. How do you find that this genre, because when we read Mitch Rapp, and Vince's words and Kyle's words, we tend to extrapolate these things out. But a lot of people, when they read them, they just read them for fun. But I feel like this genre, you can take stuff from it. Do you agree with that? Do you think that like you can say other and have a more powerful message in these thriller novels while also being entertainment?
Yeah, no, I think so. And I think some authors do, some authors don't. Some authors try not to, others don't, just because it's natural the way they're writing, and it's not really something that's conscious that they're trying to do or not to do. It's just that they're just writing a story. So for me, because of my just involvement in these things, and because it became a very therapeutic writing experience, is what happened with that first one. And I didn't expect that going in. I had the one-page executive summary of those 6, 7, 8 different ideas, and I chose Terminal List, and then I started that outline. Put that outline together, and then I started writing. And it was from sentence one, after the outline part of it, when I then moved over to turn that outline into the narrative, that I realized, hey, this is going to be a much more personal writing experience than I thought when I wrote these ideas down. And then when I went through this outline here, and they're not like Kyle's. Kyle talks about his are very in depth. Mine are as in depth as I can get, as much as I know, beginning, middle, end. A couple other things I want in there, themes, just kind of as a guide. But if there are some things that I come up to that are like kind of like a brick wall or something I can't figure out, or like, this doesn't make any sense, I know that I have time, so I know that I will figure it out. So I don't let that slow me down at all. And I think that was very, very helpful. But so anyway, start writing, and right away it becomes apparent that this is going to be a much more personal writing experience than I anticipated at the outset. Then that's in writing that first prologue. It's in writing that scene in Afghanistan with the ambush, because I think back, okay, what was it like? What did it feel like to actually get ambushed? Okay. Right. And I put that in, just the feelings, not the actual mechanics of it, but the feelings behind those sorts of things into the story. Hey, what does it feel like to get interrogated by NCIS? Oh, I have some experience there too. What did that feel like? What did I want to do? So those sorts of things. So it became much more personal than I thought, and it's remained that way. It's not like I ran out of personal experiences to kind of delve into or explore. And I kind of thought that at the beginning, like, oh, maybe I'm gonna run out of these things. Well, I'm fictionalizing those feelings and those emotions, so I can take the same experience, I just fictionalize it and tap into those emotions and tie it into multiple different storylines. And over 20 years in the SEAL teams, especially after September 11th, there's a lot to work with. So
you got plenty of stories.
All that finds its way in there.
I hear that and I think, oh, thank goodness, that means more books for a very long time.
Yeah, I'm working on book 5 right now. So I'm book 5. I have one-page executive summaries on book 5 and 6, because I feel that it is, for me anyway, I like knowing where it's going. I like knowing I'm not wasting bandwidth worried as I'm writing book 5. Like, I have no part of my thought process is worried about book 6. I already know exactly how book 6 starts, how book 6 ends, some things I want in book 6. But that's enough. Like, I don't need to get any more in depth than that, other than if I have some sort of an epiphany as I'm writing book 5, I can just jot it down and put it in the file for book 6. But other than that, it just frees up the rest of my mind to work solely on book 5. So I like going in knowing the end. I know some authors don't know the end when they start, but I like knowing the end just because I think it gives me one less thing to worry about as I'm sitting down to do this. Not worried about, oh geez, how is this going to end? How am I going to get there? What if I never get there? That sort of thing. There's no thought there. I've got it, and I'm on the path.
A component you touched on earlier was how much more can go into your books from the personal feelings, having the experience, but also your background. You said you devoured military history and everything you can get your hands on. Well, that clearly shows. We could read one of your books, and I'm a history teacher. I'm learning about new missions and operations that I never even studied, in school or in college. And now you have the Danger Close podcast. So we want you to have a chance to tell the audience a little bit more about this project. And I'm looking forward to it, learning so much more. I mean, you mentioned, I think in one of your Instagram posts a while back, you're always, showing this military knowledge that I never knew about an Israeli operation where they landed at an airport in Uganda, impersonated Idi Amin's forces and his security guards. Well, we read that into a Mitch Rapp book where Vince was writing a similar scene where Rapp goes undercover as Uday Hussein's motorcade and impersonates it. And I'm like, these connections between the Thrillerverse and real life history. Well, now your Danger Close podcast, I think, can share those messages a lot more, huh?
Yep, no, exactly. And I think, hey, in 1965, 1975, 1985, 1995, even 2005, there wasn't this medium with which to connect with readers, with which to give them a behind the scenes, with which to engage. There is today. So same thing with Instagram, with Twitter, with Facebook. Those didn't exist for authors that were writing back in the day. And maybe it was great because they didn't have these other distractions, but they also couldn't engage with that readership. They couldn't build that trust with that readership. And as a kid, I would have loved to have known a little more about what David Morrell was doing, or when you didn't even know when the next book was coming out. Like, is it a year? Is it a year and a half? Is it 2 years? There is no way to check on this. You just had to go to the bookstore and look on the shelves and see that a new one was out. There was really no way to check unless there was a magazine article or it was in a newspaper thing in the book section of the Sunday paper or something like that. But it was just, you can just Google it. That didn't exist. So with the podcast, just like with social media outreach and all that sort of thing, it's just a way to connect with people and with readers. And like I do with my blog section of the website, I have a reading list that I select. I didn't want to put just one reading list up and have that be the end. So I just pick 6 every month to put up there and talk about, hey, where I was when I was reading these, how it impacted me. There's a combat leader or as an author, that sort of thing. So I put them up each month, 6 books each time for the most part. And I have a blog section also where I go and talk about the different weapons, the different, maybe the vehicles or whatever else. It's a way to go a little deeper into the books. It might not be appropriate for the novel, but for those that want to know a little bit more, well, here's the blog section. And I look at the podcast the same way. Actually, my first interview for it was at BoucherCon, which is an authors, writers, reading fan festival in November of 2019. And I kept hearing people say, oh, there's no barrier to entry on podcasts. It's super easy. So I was like, okay. So I got this Rodecaster thing, what I still have here in my new office here. And I got the headsets and all that stuff. I'm trying to figure out how to use it. I think I got it. Okay. And then I go to BoucherCon and I do these interviews. And then I go back and I couldn't figure the rest out. Like, I have someone that does my website and all that sort of thing. And he was going to try to figure it out for me. And we just kind of got so busy because it just got crazy. So over the last couple months, I've outsourced it to people that really know what they're doing. So all I have to do is hit record to the podcast and they upload it and do all the rest and put it out there. And I write the copy and all that. But yeah, it's another.
Always hit record.
Yeah, record. Yeah, hit multiple records. I have the camera here. I have camera here. I have the record button here. I see everything is red, and we go. So yeah, it's another way to go beyond the books, go a little deeper into some of these subjects, and I get to talk to amazing people all the time. So I figured, why not just hit record when I'm having those conversations and expand the readership through that medium, through that platform.
Yeah, I look forward to listening to those on my drive into DC for work. So beyond the podcast and the book, there's even more to look forward from you. Obviously, you've mentioned on your Instagram many times that Amazon has started filming for The Terminal List, starring Chris Pratt as the one and only James Reese. So what has this process been with you, working with Amazon, working with how much are you involved? Give Can you expand on that a little more?
Yeah, it's crazy. I think every author has a different experience because each project is different. Different personalities are involved, and different production companies are involved. Everybody brings a different experience to it. So I think they're all different. So mine was the earlier part. The way Chris even got the book in the first place is Buddy called me out of the blue in November of 2017. So the first book came out in March of 2018, and he called me out of the blue to say, hey, thank you for what you did for me in the SEAL teams. Like, and I hadn't talked to him about 5 years or so, I think. And I couldn't even remember what it was. And he's like, hey, you sat me down in your office. You helped me with transition. I was getting out. You're the only person that introduced me to people in the private sector and helped me with that transition. And I always wanted to say thank you. I was like, hey, no problem. Of course. How's it going? And he's like, well, I heard you have a book coming out. And I'm like, yeah, it's coming out in a few months. I have this galley copy thing. It's kind of a rough draft. And he said, well, I'd love to give it to a friend of mine. And I was like, who's that? And he said, Chris Pratt.
Nice.
I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I was imagining Chris Pratt in this role as I was writing it for the last few years. So yeah, exactly. But when I started writing it in, I think December of 2014, I think was
that Zero Dark 30?
Zero Dark 30?
Was he doing
that? Zero Dark 30 and Andy on Parks and Rec.
Andy on Parks and Rec,
yeah.
Yep.
So if it was just Andy on Parks and Rec, maybe not, but also the Zero Dark 30. So those were the two things, but she had a very small role for those who have not seen that. But something in my head, as I was writing, they tell you, I think if you review writing books, I've heard that they say not to picture somebody playing your protagonist, but as a child of the 80s, that's just not happening. Like, I'm thinking to think of somebody to play this role. Yep. But I knew I wasn't going to be like someone who'd done it before. I thought that was important. Not to have someone like, okay, who's done this before? Mark Wahlberg's done it before. This person's done it before. This person's done it before. I need somebody that needs to do this because they need to show their range as an actor. They need to do something that's gritty, that's dark. They need to do something like Tom Hanks did with Philadelphia in the early 90s. He'd done all those comedies in the 80s, and then he took that risk with Philadelphia. And since then, he's been able to do whatever he wants. So I thought, who's that guy for this generation? And I thought Chris Pratt. So I was like, that is the guy. And so as I was writing him, didn't know I had that connection to him or anything. But my buddy gives it to Chris. Chris reads it on a flight over to, I think, Jurassic World or something, over to London on December, I think it was 28th of 2017. And then a week later, he called and wanted to option it. So and Anton Fuqua got involved. Anton Fuqua, I pictured him directing. Yes. He's the only person I ever wanted to direct it, and now they're both doing it. Antoine is directing the first episode. It's an 8-episode series. So that's how it came about. And then from there, it just takes time to line everything up. It took a year or two, so that's 2018. So this last January of 2020, we start writing the first episode, and it's me and the screenwriter, me and the showrunner are writing that. And that was fantastic. That was an incredible experience because I had not written anything like that before. So I'm learning, really. I'm just advising, but I'm learning and contributing, and it was really cool. And then the showrunner, screenwriter / it's like kind of the same person, Chris Pratt and Antoine Fuqua, they shopped it around. They took it to Amazon, they took it to Netflix, they took it to all these places. They got a bidding war going on it, and then it ended up at Amazon. And so that was last year around this time, I think. And they started putting the pieces in play and trying to figure out new schedules and all the rest of it. And here we are, and they are filming right now. So that's great. That's kind of how it came about. I'm an executive producer, and which I don't know what that means quite yet. And I'm an advisor on all the scripts. So after that, they put after they sold it to Amazon, then Amazon puts a group of writers together. Yep, they put the writers' room together, so that about 15 people, maybe 10 to 15 were in there, people together, but they're only contracted for a short amount of time, a month, 2 months, 3 months. I forget what it was, because in 2020 everything kind of blended. But they put the scripts together, and as they finish, they send them to me, and I do take my red pen out and do my edits and circle yes, no, here, no one would ever say this, that sort of thing. Yeah. Send them back, and then they go on to their projects. So then it comes down to just the showrunner, screenwriter again, and then one other screenwriter also, I think. And then I continue to advise as those scripts go up and down the Amazon chain, get notes from executives, and come back down. And then they get their final sign off, and then they hit the ground running. So that's kind of that was my experience anyway thus far. And then I'll be out there here a few times over the next few months to maybe do a cameo and also.
Hey there.
Each director, each episode is different, so I really want to be able to shake hands and say hi to each director and thank them for
that's cool.
For doing this. So
nice. Well,
is season 1 going to be all of your first book, just Terminal List, or?
Yep, Terminal List, and then I guess you have to see how it does. Like if it doesn't do well, then there's probably no second season. If it does well, and they're already talking about setting the second season up.
I'm sure it'll do well. I'm sure it'll do well.
So I guess you never. You never know. But you think back to some of those movies that were touted, as being like the best movies of all time that just totally flop, and you never know. I heard an interesting story from the crew reviews guys. They were telling me that Rocky was supposed to. There's another movie that was coming out with like De Niro or something at the same time. And the deal was, this De Niro movie will make up for everything we lose on Rocky.
Oh, come on now.
Yeah. Rocky was they thought Rocky was going to be a bomb.
Yeah. And it ended up that this other one, I forget, it was like New York, I think it was called, something like that. Anyway, this one, no one's ever heard of it. I'd never even heard of it. Anyway, that one. And then Rocky, of course, gave us Rocky Balboa and gave us all those movies and all that inspiration.
Man. 7 Rocky movies. Yeah.
I'm just thinking ahead now. I would love to see the Hastings Ranch on set. I'd love to be on a set of that out in, what is it, Montana?
And, we might find out. We'll see if we get to a third season.
Or even Africa, the African scenes that would be awesome to see on screen.
That would be pretty cool. And there's some new technologies out there that people are looking into and investing in. I think COVID really pushed a lot of that research and investment forward, being able to like bring other places to Hollywood and using all this, not animation, but whatever they do with that magic to really kind of bring that green screen to the next level. Yeah, bringing all that to the next level where it actually looks real, but it's all just out there, magic.
Until you're forced to make changes, you don't. But then when you have to,
you do what you got to do.
So,
yeah. We don't want to go down the rabbit hole of Mitch Rapp on screen because there's mixed results there, and that's a conversation for another time. But we do want to get to Mitch Rapp, and so let me ask you: do you remember meeting Mitch Rapp? What was your first Vince Flynn book, or do you have any fond memories of reading and encountering Vince Flynn and his works?
I do. Actually, I brought a show and tell here.
Ooh.
I brought the first book that I read.
Yes.
Let's
go.
Mellowed out, like expanded out, a little bit. But this is the original one that I read on the plane to Afghanistan. This is the original one. So now I have the other two that are the hardcover first editions. One with Simon & Schuster, one that Vince published before that are out in the box signed. So those are pretty special. But this is the paperback that I read for the first time, and this is obviously Mitch Rapp is not in this, but this is where I was introduced to Vince Flynn and Michael O'Rourke and Scott Coleman. And that whole universe starts here. Mitch Rapp wasn't in it, probably because it's my first introduction to Vince Flynn. That's why it's probably my favorite. I don't like choosing favorites on anything because everything's so subjective.
Sure.
So because of where I read this, the time that we were in, so it is very, very meaningful. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. I was like, I would love to be able to do something like this one day. I was already on that path, but I was like, oh wow, this is something different. Like this was, there's certain things you can point to that move the genre forward.
Right.
You look at Most Dangerous Game short story, you look at Rogue Male, you look at First Blood, you look at Brotherhood of the Rose, you look at Spy Who
Came in from the Cold. Yep.
Certain books that move the genre forward, and this was one for the new era. This was it. And then of course, double down with Transfer of Power next. And I can't remember if I read Transfer of Power next or if I read this and I was just like, okay, there's another one out. I can't remember because I was this is 2003 when
You'd have
I read
to match it up with your deployments and try to calendar it out.
I think I'm on a plane in 2003 when I read this. So I can't remember if it was third option next or if it was Transfer of Power. I can't remember if I went out of order. I might have gone out of order in the beginning just out of necessity.
Third option's not a bad way to meet Rapp. That's a good one.
And I think so, like when you talk to people, a lot of them are like, what, the third option? They're like, well, I love this one. And that's why
it's one of my favorites.
Is it? Awesome. I love it. And I think it's because I read them out of order. I think I read this one next, and I wish I could remember, but I think I meet Mitch Rapp in this one for the first time, and then I retransfer power.
Okay.
I think that's how it went, but I'm a little hazy in that time period. I know Term Limits was first because I know exactly where I was and what I was doing, and then I was like, okay, what's next? And I think it was this, and then transfer power, and then in order.
Nice.
From then on, but it might be because I read it out of order that it stands out so much, and I love this one. I think this is fascinating.
It's
really Mitch as a spy, like really his spy craft, and working with Thomas Stansfield, who was the director in that one, and his time wrapping up at the CIA. It's an awesome one. It's a classic.
I love this one. So I want to go back and read this one again. Actually, just because I keep I feel like I have this connection to this one, and I have gone back and read the Prelude a few times just because it stood out. Like I didn't forget those lines.
That's a great couple of pages right there.
Yeah. It's awesome. So I love that. So I've come back to that a few times because it's I just remember it. So
that book reminds me the most of like Vince trying to. At times, I feel like he tries to not mimic, but like adapts or plays on certain stories, and I feel like that one was most like a Jason Bourne type novel, or what's his? Okay. I'm blanking on the author.
Ludlum.
Ludlum, yeah, like an homage to Ludlum.
Okay, yeah, I know. I think I know exactly what you're saying, and it's been now not quite 20 years, I guess, but a couple moons since I read it. So, but I was saying if it was, I was going to say that there's some elements of maybe a Daniel Silva, of a Gabriel Allon type in this storyline, more so.
There too.
And of course, I'm dating. I mean, I'm like. There's a little fog and haze between when I read this and now. Like I haven't looked back at this in quite some time. So, but I seem to remember that more so than the others. I wouldn't really say that about any other of Vince Flynn's novels. But in looking back and just thinking of them broadly, that does stand out as a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, we want to respect your time, so we like to wrap up asking what our guests are currently consuming. Is there any media you'd like to plug? A book, a TV show? What's on your nightstand? What's on your Netflix? What have you been consuming these last few weeks and whatnot?
Yeah. So I am. I've been full on into this, figuring out this podcast, the Danger Close podcast, for the last couple of weeks, like getting it ready to go, the graphics, what goes on Twitter, what goes on Instagram, what goes on Facebook, when do you post, how do you link, like all those sorts of things have totally monopolized my time.
Right.
But a few books have come in over the last few days. So I haven't started any of them yet, but a lot of OSS training type books from world in and around World War II. Really the creation of the CIA. So I've been going down that rabbit hole a little bit because it's so fascinating to me, that recruitment and who even knew about it, how did they get those people, what did they do, all that sort of thing. So that's kind of the rabbit hole that I am going down right now as we speak. Netflix wise, we're in season 3 of Cobra Kai. Nice. By the time we get to the end of the night these days, like we have 3 kids, a dog, it's chaos around here at all times. So those episodes, I think they feel like they're like 20 minutes. Maybe they're a little longer, maybe they're 40, I don't know, but they seem like they're 20 or 30 minutes. So that's really all we have time for at the end of the day. But we love the Bosch series. I think I think there's a new season of that out yet, but there's one more coming. Is that right? I think so. I think that's in the works. So I like that. And yeah, that's
nice.
Loving that stuff. But really, it's right now building out the podcast. I'm writing book 5. I'm getting ready to still making little tweaks on some of these other scripts because we're filming episode 1 right now. So you can still make tiny tweaks to episode 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So doing that as they come into the inbox. So it's a crazy time right now. And I'm actually
you're a busy man.
Yeah. So I'm blurbing some books here and there for people, and that's always an honor to do that as well. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, to keep a Mitch Rapp pod tradition alive, just in our last second here together, I'd like to leave you, like I do most of our guests, with your very own personalized limerick. When we review books, I always give each book a limerick, and so there's limericks for our guests as well. So here we go. A warrior, a husband, a father, a seal. James Reese or Jack Carr doth this reveal. A man on a mission, surpassing competition. To every thriller reader, his works surely appeal. Thank you, Jack, for coming on the podcast.
Yes,
really
thank you.
appreciate it.
That is so awesome. Thank you, guys. That is so cool.
We'll post that one for you.
That'd be awesome. No, I really appreciate that. That is amazing. Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Thank you for doing this podcast. I love it. I've been intrigued since I first saw it. So since I first saw it pop up a year or so ago. Keep doing it. And please, anytime I can come on, love talking about Mitrap, love talking about Vince Flynn, love talking about this genre. Anytime. I'd love
awesome.
to
Cool.
come on and
All right.
talk with you guys.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, keep up the good work. Thank you.
Yeah,
Awesome. Take care. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as we did. It's probably up there, like tied with my first, like both of our interviews with Kyle. I was so giddy like before it,
Right.
the same way I was giddy before interviewing Kyle. So what a great guy. I was so nervous because on Instagram he looks like, like obviously he's a Navy SEAL, like he's very serious. He normally has a picture of guns or whatever. So I was just nervous that he was just, this very, I don't know, brusque guy. Not at all.
So outgoing.
Not at all. Like so nice. He like, was just so engaged. I don't know. I just really enjoyed our conversation with Jack. It was awesome.
I don't think we'll ever have a guest more excited to just chit chat about Mitrap. Like you and I, we get giddy about this, but he was literally on his rocker, like not sitting still, getting to talk to us about Mitrap.
No, and the fact that he like had his copy of Term Limits that he picked up and it meant something to him. Yeah. Like all of us,
he read it on the plane to Afghanistan.
No,
it's awesome.
All of us who are probably listening right now have some sort of that Mitrap moment or that Vince Flynn moment, or your origin story, and just to hear that from him was great. So hope you guys enjoyed that. Next time when we meet, we will be going over Extreme Measures, part 1, sort of the first half of the book. So if you haven't read that, or if you want to read it again, dust off your copy, catch up with us roughly, halfway through the book we'll be covering. Again, we can't say thank you enough to our patrons, including our special operator, Sherry F., our special agents, George, Matt, Dawn, Dennis, Peggy, Catherine, Ray, Bridget, and Jeff. Please, it really would help if you could subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, or I guess Apple's the only one that does ratings, but, anywhere you get your podcasts, hit that subscribe button. Find us at mitrappod.com. You can use our Twitter or Instagram handle at mitrappod. And as always, just let Mitch be Mitch. Just a disclaimer, this podcast is not affiliated with Vince Flynn, Kyle Mills, or Simon & Schuster, but thank you to them for bringing us the wonderful world of rap. And the music soundtrack is Guerrilla Tactics by Raphael Crooks.